Gurri to all of you, or hello in the local language. My name's Tracy and I'm here today at the Rocks Discovery Museum where we're going to learn all about the top 10 Aboriginal innovations, technologies and inventions. Inventions and technologies that are still being used in society to this day. Our first innovation or Aboriginal invention or technology is called the boomerang, boys and girls. I'm sure we're all aware of the boomerang. Or the word that was originally spoken to the early settlers was boomerang. Now boomerang doesn't actually refer to this boomerang, actually refers to this one, which looks a lot different. You can see it's a different shape. It's not symmetrical, which means if I cut it down the middle, is it the same on each side? Some are, some aren't. There are a lot of different types of boomerangs, and this differs depending on the nation or the clan that you're dealing with. The boomerang itself, boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen, has been described as one of the most ergonomic designs to ever be produced. This shape that we call in science or physics is called an aerofoil. And to the naked eye, we can't see, but that just lifts up a little bit and there's a bit of a lip here. And that lip actually provides lift and drag. Now this whole shape itself is actually called an aerofoil design, and it gives us something called perpetual motion, which just means the weight gets distributed from one end to the other as the boomerang turns around. Therefore, it doesn't need a motor to keep itself going. It operates on perpetual motion. Now the boomerang has been used in many different engineering designs across architecture, parks, buildings, bridges, transport. There are many, many different areas of industry that the boomerang has infiltrated and been used in engineering. I'll give you a moment to think about, where have you seen a boomerang before? Where have you seen a boomerang shape? I may give you a few little clues, ladies and gentlemen. We do see the boomerang quite regularly. Everywhere we go, we're actually looking at the shape of a boomerang. So that's the boomerang, specifically designed and originally designed by Aboriginal people, and it's actually a hunting object, okay? So it's a weapon or a hunting tool for men. Basically, this boomerang would be used to hunt birds. Because it's symmetrical, so it's same on both sides, that means it will return to me if it's thrown correctly. Some people think just all boomerangs return, but they don't. Only ones that have symmetry. The ones that don't have symmetry would be similar to the boomerang that we described earlier, which the early settlers actually described as a hook or a smiter sword or a sword boomerang, basically. And this here is not for throwing to the air to birds that it's going to return to you. You'd actually be using this for close combat, one-on-one fighting, very much like a sword, or for hunting bigger game like kangaroos, emus, dingoes. You would actually be able to break bones with a boomerang because of the velocity, force, torque, the speed. This is able to break bones. So don't ever think you can catch a boomerang like this, ladies and gentlemen. We always catch a boomerang just like a frisbee to make sure that you've still got your fingers at the end of it. So that's our first invention, the boomerang. Our next innovation or invention, ladies and gentlemen, are bush foods and medicines. I'm sure all of you have heard of some type of Aboriginal bush tucker or traditional foods or some traditional medicines. And these are actually being adopted and used by mainstream Australia today. So you are actually able to go now down to Coles and grab yourself a tray of bangers or kangaroo sausages. You could go down the tea aisle and grab yourself a box of lemon myrtle green tea. You could absolutely go down your jam aisle and find some lily-pilly jam or maybe some lily-pilly juice. So we have a range of fruits, vegetables, grains, as well as proteins such as kangaroo, emu, and other mammals that are native to the area. These are actually becoming very popular these days. And not only our foods you can find in your local supermarket, you'll also be able to find some bush medicines within your local pharmacy. Invention number 3, ladies and gentlemen, is called the didgeridoo. I'm sure you've all heard that word before, didgeridoo. Now put your hand up if you're a lady or a girl or a woman out there. Well, for us it's called a didgeridoo. Don't, because you're not allowed to play it. It's specifically a man's instrument and it was traditionally played by men. Today we see all sorts of women think they can play didgeridoos who are non-Aboriginal, but it's actually taboo. And the name didgeridoo is just a name ascribed by non-Aboriginal people. The instrument itself is so sacred to men that its name was very rarely spoken. And its name changes depending on the language group that you're dealing with. But the name that is most known from the top end of Australia is yerdaki, not a didgeridoo. The word didgeridoo is a bit like what it sounds like. I'll pretend to play. That's really just where the name comes from. It's not the name of it, and they were never given the name by any of the local people because it's a sacred instrument. Okay, number 4, fire stick farming. Aboriginal people have used the practice of fire stick farming for thousands of years. This practice involved early cool burns around the living area of Aboriginal people's living spaces. Within the cooler dry season, they would then do soft or slow burns, and this would ensure that during the hot season, those hot burns would not occur. This practice was going on for thousands of years, and it was noted by the early settlers at how well the local Aboriginal people had taken care of the landscape and had used fire to do that. These practices are now being adopted widely across Australia, especially after the 2019 fires that we had. Australian government has now realised that the practice of fire stick farming and the knowledge of those practices will actually help us to ensure that we don't have many more dangerous fires that affect the whole community. Okay. Innovation number 5, stone and natural glass tools. Aboriginal stone tools were highly sophisticated in their range and uses. Stone and natural glasses were used and fashioned into chisels, saws, knives, axes and spearheads. Aboriginal people are thought to be one of the first to use stone tools to grind seeds and the first to create ground edges on stone tools. They could grind a precision edge from stone that was as sharp as any metal blade found in England in 1788. Some of those have been studied today and have been said to be 20 times more sharp than a surgical scalpel. Innovation number 6, thermostatic resins, basically glues to all of us. Aboriginal people made a powerful thermoplastic resin from porcupine grass and grass trees such as the xanthoria tree. They beat the resin out of the grass, then cleaned it and heated it over fire to create a sticky black substance, a bit like tar. The resulting resin hardened as it cooled and was strong enough to bind rock to wood, much like our axes. And this resin was used to create tools such as spears, woomeras, axes as we said, but also to waterproof things such as nowies or canoes. These glues have been studied today and are said to be just as strong as any industrial glue on the market. Number 7, games and toys. It may surprise you, boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen, to learn that Aboriginal people did have their own games and toys. Some of these toys were things that we still play with today, like spinning tops and balls and dolls, hunting weapons and tools. Other games were games that we still play today. One such game is a game called Mangruk. We know this game today as Aussie Rules or AFL, and we use a ball much like this. Prior to colonisation, the Victorian people who developed Mangruk actually used a ball made of possum skin. Today we use a standard AFL football that's made from kangaroo leather. So a game that was played for thousands of years prior to colonisation has now become Australia's leading sport or number 1 pastime, and you can watch that show on NITV, an Aussie Rules football show called Mangruk. Catch. 8. Animal hide water bags. Aboriginal people always had vessels to carry things in. When they needed to carry water, they actually would use animal hides. They would sew the hides together and make a little pouch within the hide. So then this could be carried around. Water was always available and could be carried over long distances. This particular practice was adopted very quickly by early settlers right across Australia and other parts of the world. Not only does the animal hide keep the water nice and cool, but it also provides you with a portable vessel to take the water. Other vessels such as coolamons or dilly bags would either not hold the water or they would evaporate because of the harsh conditions in our environment. So the water bag, and we still see these in use today. If we go into a camping or disposal shop, we can still find animal hide water bags being used today. Number 9, weirs and fish traps. Aboriginal people had a very complex understanding of engineering, physics, aquaculture and their environment. And in doing so, we're able to produce some very complex fishing traps and weir systems. This was done by using the environment to their advantage, using the canals and lakes as well as the tides to help trap the fish. Some weirs and fish traps were made out of natural fibres and some were man-made. Aboriginal fishing weirs and fish traps are probably some of the oldest human technologies on Earth. And we're still using these technologies to this day. We're just using different resources to develop them. The final invention we'll talk about today is the Boomerang, another uniquely Australian invention or technology. Now the Boomerang is used to provide leverage when throwing your spears. What does that mean, you say? Well, basically, it means that I'm going to make my arm become taller by adding a Boomerang. That's going to allow me to throw my spear higher, further, faster, stronger. So the point of a Boomerang is to provide leverage and to launch your spear from. They come in many different shapes and sizes. They're made of many different resources, but will all have that unique similar spike which allows the spear to be launched off. If I give you an example of that, if you can imagine this is my Boomerang and pretend I've got a big spear here, I would basically put this on like this, and with one hand, it's done in the one motion, I would then throw and launch my spear. This technology, ladies and gentlemen, is still being used today. We do have a town in South Australia named Boomerang, and it's because that's where we launch our satellites from. But another flip side to that is, you probably all use a Boomerang every day and don't realise you do. No, I don't, you say. Of course you do. I'm sure we've all seen one of these down the shop. This is what we play with our dogs, play ball with, and it's based on the same principle of leverage. Higher, faster, stronger. Thanks for tuning into our NAIDOC Artefact Talk program. I hope you've learned a lot today about the interesting things that Aboriginal people have produced and how these inventions and technologies are still being used by all of us today. Thanks everyone, happy NAIDOC week.